Hi folks, hope you're doing well. It's nearly 3 p.m. now, on the 18th of the 7th, 2020. Well, on the two videos that I've done before, just the two recent ones on judging culture, the judging culture part, and then part two, there was something else that sort of came to mind about that. A very fair point, something I've mentioned before, but this idea that if you're white, then you should recognize that you've had white privilege. But again, we're stepping into that situation that I've mentioned before. You're judging people based upon something that you really cannot judge people upon. If you judge people on the colour of their skin, then that's being racist to start with. Saying that someone who is white has had no suffering, has had no pain, that they can't identify with black people in any way, shape, or form is just stupidity. Second point, no one's white, no one's black. Pinky skinned, brown skinned. Right? Brown skinned of different levels, pinky skinned of different levels. In the summer, the pinky skins get a bit browner. Hey! Not really. I don't sunbathe. Never really have been interested in sunbathing. Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to run around topless. Or even a youth when I was playing football with mates and stuff like that. Yeah, we used to run around. Yeah, one half would be skins, one half would be wearing tops. You always want to be skins because of the fact in that hot weather. Yeah, you thought it would cool you down more having no top on, but actually it didn't. Not particularly. Anyway, back to the point. Yes. If you could for a second look properly into the lives of people, you could look at an average pinky skinned person, an average brown skinned person, and you really wouldn't see that much of a difference. Not at all. Because again, if you're looking at levels of suffering, if you're talking about that white people have privilege, then you're saying that white people should have a better life than black people, according to your understanding, if you're saying this. The fact that so many people who are considered as white don't have that much of a better life than people that are considered as black says that they are suffering, if anything, more than the people that are so-called black. Because the people that are so-called black, they say, well, we won't be able to succeed in society because the cops are against us, the culture is against us, everything has been set up against us, right? And it's all about not wanting us to succeed. So therefore, if you're not succeeding, you're actually meeting expectations. Bang. There goes your whole idea of white privilege, doesn't it? Really? Because the majority of white privileged people should be expected to succeed in life. Yet they don't. Why? Because society is set against them. Even the police are against them. Why? Because they're poor. They're not rich. They're not wealthy. They're not powerful. They don't control massive things. So, yeah. It is a situation where those people should be really saying to the people that are successful who are so-called black, you've got privilege that you shouldn't have. You are supposed to be unsuccessful. What on earth is going on? You've got my privilege. Give it back. See, your argument is stupid. When you're talking about white privilege, when you're talking about the fact that white people should acknowledge their white privilege, when I linked the link earlier about the story about the cancel culture, and there's a photo, and it says, white silence is violence. Right, okay. Black silence, what's that? What's that? You're basically saying that because we are privileged, we have to now stand up and we have to give up our privilege, right? Something that most white people don't have never had, never even seen anything like privilege, never have done. But we've got to give that up so that these so-called black people can have more privilege. We talk about living in a fantasy world. You're living in a world that doesn't exist. I mean, we had the arguments only a few years ago about women not getting paid the same as men, and that firms were intentionally paying women less, and that argument was blown out the water by the evidence. So of course they've now gone away from that a bit, and they've gone into this. This again is just as stupid an argument as that argument was. See, folks, as a Christian, you've got to be loving, you've got to be compassionate towards people, friendly and all that. But that doesn't mean you're on the left. That doesn't mean you should be on the left, because the left is just as insane as the right is. So you shouldn't be on either side. Now, I'd also say that I saw something earlier that also was a bit ridiculous. I'm not sure whether this is left or right, claiming that people are intentionally setting alight Christian worship places because there's a cathedral in Nantes in France that's now alight. Well, first of all, that cathedral is probably not a worship place for Christians. It's probably a religious place. Nothing to do with Christianity in any way, shape or form. But whether that's the left claiming that or the right claiming that, again, before an investigation is even done and an understanding as to what caused the flipping thing, these buildings are old, very blinking old. They're not exactly fire resistant. They weren't built for that purpose. And a lot of that work wasn't done because of the fact that they're incredibly old buildings. They don't want to go and muck around with them. So, of course, during the summer months, anything can happen and things can suddenly set alight. In these buildings, you'll also have old electrics, where the electrics haven't quite been dealt with yet. They were done 60, 70 years ago and they need to be replaced. Well, they weren't. Part of the reason why they weren't, I mean, even like we know with, I was saying, with cars, freaky things are happening. You've got spiders, making webs inside the passenger door of cars now because people aren't generally having passengers in their cars because of the Rona. So weird things are happening. Is it possible that something went badly wrong because these buildings aren't being used as much as they would be before? So somebody turned on the light, suddenly, poof, the electric went a bit bizarre and set fire to something. That's quite likely. So claiming that anti-Christians are setting the light to buildings is just ridiculously stupid. Oh dear. All right, more news. Apparently, Congressman and civil rights legend John Lewis has died at the age of 80. Well, I'd say he had a pretty good life because when he was born, people weren't expected to live till they were 80. So he's done very, very well. And if he was a brown-skinned person, certainly at that point in time when he was born, if you were brown-skinned, you weren't expected to live. until you were 80. So he's done incredibly well in that way. He's had a wonderful, long life with incredible experiences. Hopefully, he was saved and he's given his life to God and he's now in heaven. That's the hope. So anyway, yeah, that'll do. But white privilege, yeah, doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. I mean, for a few, it does exist, but that's not particularly because they're white. Because, again, you can find brown-skinned people that have privilege. And you can. Of course you can. You know, they're rich, they're powerful. And so, yeah, they have privilege. Not as many. No, let's get it right. Not as many, though. And part of the reason why you have more white-skinned or pinky-skinned people that have privilege are in those powerful positions is because those families go back for generation and generation and generation and generation and generation. They've had those power positions and that privilege for a long time. Whereas, if you are a brown-skinned person and your generations from, 20 generations ago would have been in an African village, generally speaking, money wasn't that important. Power wasn't that important. You weren't trying to take over your country. Your villagers weren't trying to take over the country. They were doing village work, village stuff, and being happy being part of a village and, working together to make the village work. Yes, you had a leader in the village, but it probably wasn't anything like the landowners, the out of order, disgusting nature of the people that had the privilege over centuries in Europe. Because really, those are the people that have the privilege. But their families have, given their souls for that privilege. Now, if you want to give your soul for privilege, go for it. Yeah. Go for it. I'd say no, not a good idea. I do have a certain amount of privilege, but my privilege comes from me being now a child of God. My privilege does not come from the colour of my skin, not in any way, shape, or form. If my privilege came from my colour of skin, why was I rejected by my mother before I was even born? Why was I the only child and free put into care? Why did I have to go through physical, mental, emotional, and sexual abuse as a child? Is that privilege? Was I being privileged as a white child at that point in time? There are plenty of pinky-skinned people that have had similar experiences, that have had terrible parents, abusive parents, in various different ways, that have gone to a crap school because you live in a poorer area. I mean, the brown-skinned reporters tend to try to make out it's only brown-skinned people that go through that. It's utter rubbish. Utter rubbish. It's poor people that go through that. It's people that can't buy the houses in the richer areas. They're the ones who go through that, irrespective of the colour of skin. A lot of this stuff is highly offensive because, it's completely disregarding reality that most people actually experience. A poor person in the UK or in Europe will experience very, very similar things to a poor brown-skinned person in America. The reason why they don't experience exactly the same because in America, guns are worshipped and the police carry guns. If they did in the UK and the rest of Europe, you would have pinky-skinned, poor people being shot at around about the same rate as you have brown-skinned people in America being shot. You would have the same sort of violence against poor, pinky-skinned people as you have against brown-skinned people. I've made videos in the past and said, yeah, if you tell your kids to fear the police, then the way you behave when in a situation where you're confronted with the police will be completely different to someone who doesn't fear the police, how they behave. And the police therefore behave differently to you because of the way you are behaving. Now, you generally find that poor, pinky-skinned people will fear the police in UK and Europe because of the fact that they don't have the same degree of protection. They can't get the good lawyer. When they are sitting in court, they're not wearing the really expensive suit. So, therefore, the jury isn't really looking at them thinking, well, that's an upstanding citizen. I don't think he's likely to have done that. They're looking at them thinking, okay, this is some poor bit of scum who's obviously done things wrong in their life. Not sitting there for no reason, are they? Even if they didn't do it, it's understandable the police picked them up, really. And that's the reality. That's how life is. That's how privilege is. There are a certain amount of people with privilege, but those people with privilege, generally speaking, have the privilege because their families have got that over centuries. And they've sold their soul to get it. They've done disgraceful, despicable things to get that. They're not very nice people, really. But to label every person that you consider as white as being privileged is just stupid. I mean, in the end, you can't even have a discussion with anyone saying things like that because the stupidity of their argument. How can you have a discussion with that? Yeah, it's basic. You're trying to have a discussion with someone who's just going blah 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 blah. That's basically what they're doing. The stupidity of their argument is just like doing that. Well, how can you have a discussion with that? How do you answer that? You can't. How do you how do you figure out what to do with that? Oh, you can't, can you? Yeah. Oh well, yeah. So privilege, yeah. When you speak with experience and understanding, then we can have a discussion. When you say some white people have privilege, then yeah, you're right. Some do. But the majority don't. So all this stuff that when a so-called white person says something and you say, shut up because you have privilege, I'm sorry, no, they don't. And you should shut up because you have stupidity. Thankfully, stupidity is not infectious. You take care. God bless. And I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye.